My parents called to tell me I had to go meet my childhood sweetheart's blind date. Edward, my childhood sweetheart, was still asleep beside me. I thought it was a joke and whispered, "Edward, they said they've arranged a blind date for you." He lazily murmured, "MMH," and pulled me into his arms. "Be a good girl, Bien. Pick out an outfit for me later. And help fix my hair." I froze. Edward opened his eyes and let out a mocking laugh. "What? What's wrong with you? We're just friends with benefits, right? Don't tell me you actually thought I was going to marry you?" Chapter 01. I was caught off guard. All I could do was scramble around awkwardly. I didn't dare look at Edward. I pushed him away and grabbed my clothes off the floor, throwing them on without thinking. "Bianca, look at me." Edward propped his head on his arm, eyes gleaming with amusement. "You didn't seriously think we were a couple, did you?" My mind kept circling around the words friends with benefits. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't fasten my bra. Edward tossed off the blanket, revealing his lean, muscular waist. He knelt at the edge of the bed. He reached out and helped fasten it, like he'd done it 100 times. With my head lowered, I asked, "Who's the blind date?" I gave a bitter laugh. "Let me guess. Someone Uncle Lee randomly dragged in from the matchmaking corner?" I looked in the mirror at the red marks scattered across my skin, still sore between my legs. Edward, wearing only gray sweatpants, came over and buried his head in the crook of my neck. "It's Misty." He raised his perfectly shaped eyes with a teasing glint and repeated, "Misty, the upperclassman from the art department back in college." I'm not gonna lie, just thinking about seeing her again makes me a little nervous. My hand froze halfway through applying lipstick. Of course I remembered. Edward had a crush on her. He never got the chance to confess before she left the country. I thought he was over it. Edward stared at me, lips pressed together. "Bianca, don't get any weird ideas about me. We've known each other since we were kids, running around but naked. Sure, you're pretty, but I've always seen you as a friend. You're my favorite meal buddy, road trip buddy, and yeah, bed buddy too." It felt like someone smashed something over my head. I went cold all over. I forced a smile as I looked at Edward's smirk. He kept going. "I even know what underwear you'll pick to match which outfit. It's kind of boring, honestly. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, see you lying next to me, and I get scared. Scared that if we really did what our families always joked about, if we got married, I'd see the end of my life right then and there." He shuddered after saying that, as if just the idea of it was enough to make him tremble. I dug my nails into my palm, holding back the tears. "I have something to do." And with that, I threw on my coat and fled like a deserter. Chapter 02. I thought Edward and I were in a real relationship. After all, we did everything couples usually do. We ate together, went on dates, hung out with friends. During rounds of truth or dare, we'd boldly kiss each other and say, "I love you." Edward would personally drive me to and from work every time it rained. At family dinners, he'd secretly hold my hand under the table. I didn't know that what I believed to be a 6-month relationship was actually just a game of playing house. "Bien?" My mom tapped on the car window and leaned in, concerned. I snapped back to reality, seeing my tear-streaked face in the rearview mirror. I quickly wiped it dry, replied in a fluster, and got out of the car. "Mom." I was afraid she'd notice how wrecked I looked, so I threw myself into her arms with a smile. "I missed you," holding a bag of groceries. She linked her arm through mine and let out a breath of relief. "Silly girl, why were you sitting in the car instead of coming in? You scared me. Didn't you see the news about someone suffocating in their car?" I nodded repeatedly. Then she suddenly changed the subject. "Oh right. Bien. Edward's blind date is coming over soon. Uncle Lee and Auntie have taken it quite seriously this time. I heard Edward's been planning this for a while. He even said he was afraid the girl might feel awkward. So having another girl like you around might help her relax. I've been close with Auntie Lee for years. It'd be a little hard to skip today." Mom looked at me, hesitant and conflicted. I gave a soft mem, and forced a smile. "Don't worry, Mom. I get it. I'm just there to liven the mood and say nice things, right?" She gave me a pained look. Of course she understood. Our photos were still on my bedside table. Every gift Edward gave me was carefully tucked away like a treasure, not to mention the pages of my notebooks filled with dense, barely disguised affection. How could she not see? We walked home in silence. Just as we reached the door, I suddenly said, "Dad's retiring next month. Let's move to City C and settle down." Mom looked at me, startled. I smiled and teased her. "Haven't you and Dad been planning to retire there?" "I don't have any grand ambitions. Being a dance teacher and staying by your side is enough for me." Chapter 03. Sitting with my parents at Edward's house felt different this time. Before, it had always been lighthearted and full of teasing. Just last time, we even sneaked into his room under the excuse of gaming, stealing kisses in private. But this time, you wouldn't believe how much effort that rascal Edward put into pursuing Misty. Why not just go after her directly? Instead, he insisted on saying he wanted to date her with marriage in mind, and even had Oldly pull strings just so she'd agree to meet him as a blind date today. I looked around at the carefully decorated house, filled with roses. There were fruit platters, candies, and tea on the table, and even Edward's dog was dressed in a bright red outfit. Edward stood in front of the mirror, checking himself again and again, making sure every detail was perfect. The ridiculous part was that just last night, we were tangled up in a passionate night together. He had kissed the tiny red mole on my waist so tenderly. And the underwear he was wearing now? I bought it for him. Sigh. "What a pity," Aunt Lee said as she held my mom's hand with regret. "Back when they were little, we even said we'd become in-laws someday. We had a childhood engagement arranged for them." She glanced at me. "I really adore Bien. She's not only beautiful but also kind, cheerful, and full of life." I kept my eyes down, afraid to respond, afraid that if I let my guard slip, the tears would fall uncontrollably. "Mom." Edward frowned, clearly displeased. "You said it yourself, that was something from your generation. If you and Aunt Zhao are so close, why don't you two get married?" "What does that have to do with me? This is the 21st century. Stop bringing up these outdated ideas." He didn't care at all about saving face for the elders. Then he turned to me, tone cold, like I'd made Aunt Lee say those things. "Bianca, where's that bracelet my mom gave you?" When I didn't respond, Edward stepped forward and grabbed my wrist, pulling up my sleeve, the one they called the token of that childhood engagement. "I'm just afraid Misty would feel uncomfortable if she found out." The moment he said that, Uncle Lee and my dad stopped mid-sip of their tea, and my mom, who had been arranging flowers for Edward, froze as well. The room instantly turned tense and ugly. Mom looked at me, and the vase and scissors in her hands crashed loudly onto the table. Just as she was about to stand up, Aunt Lee quickly pulled her back down. Then Aunt Lee stood up decisively, shielding me and shoving Edward hard. "Edward, what the hell are you doing? Don't even mention Misty, nothing's even started with her yet." "That bracelet? You cried and begged Bien to wear it when you were 17. It was like Edward's soul finally returned to his body. He remembered that year, when someone else confessed to me. He panicked, secretly drank, stole the bracelet in the middle of the night, and knelt in my house, crying and pleading for me to wear his family's heirloom jade bangle. He tugged at his tie, took a deep breath, and smiled at me. "I was just nervous. I don't take back gifts. You should keep it." "It's fine, I'll return it. I'll go get it from home right now." I interrupted, tone calm. "I'll be quick. Won't take long." Before anyone could react, I picked up my bag and walked out in large strides. Chapter 04. When I came back with the bracelet and was just about to knock on the door, a loud cheer startled me. "Welcome." Edward's smile froze the moment he saw me. "Why are you here?" He clearly hadn't expected me to return, let alone actually return the bracelet. When I handed it to him, Edward's face was full of disbelief. In the end, he took it, then leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Bianca, come on, considering how well we get along as the perfect duo. Please don't make a scene today. Misty's a girl. She's sensitive. Don't say anything that might upset her." I ignored him. "Misty's a girl, am I not?" I looked at the man I had loved through all my youth. The bone-deep chill of it all nearly swallowed me whole. 10 minutes later, Misty arrived at the Lee house, led in by the matchmaker. The elders chatted together, clearly hitting it off. That was also why my parents had agreed to come. Amid the polite small talk, the matchmaker smoothly introduced Edward's background and future plans in detail. Throughout the conversation, Edward sat next to Misty, every gesture radiating care and attention. He was nearly 30, yet looked like a lovesick teenager. None of it had anything to do with me, which was just fine. I was already planning my escape. But then, unexpectedly, Misty looked at me with a gentle smile. "You must be Bianca? I've heard a lot about you. You used to be the campus crush in the art department." Suddenly being called out like that, I waved my hands quickly. "Oh no, nothing like that. Just some school jokes back then." I thought the attention would soon shift away, but Misty wouldn't let up. "Oh, come on. I remember that dance. You performed a traditional piece at the ball, and the next day there were flowers piled up outside your dorm." Before I could respond, Misty playfully tugged on Edward's arm. "You two grew up together. How did you never get together? I remember you two being so close, like one person. Everyone thought you'd end up getting married." All eyes turned to me. I couldn't explain it, but despite her sweet tone, I felt a strange hostility radiating from Misty. "She?" Edward looked at Misty and handed her a neatly peeled apple. "To you, she's a girl, or some kind of goddess, even. But to me, she's just a tomboy. My bro." We practically wore the same pair of pants growing up. Then, as if recalling something funny, Edward chuckled. "You wouldn't believe it, when Bianca cried as a kid, her snot and tears would flow together. That giant stream of snot, if I hadn't wiped it for her, it would have gone right into her mouth. And when she was 15, she fainted during PE class and started babbling nonsense, flailing her arms around like, 'I have something to do. I'll head out first,' I said, cutting him off. Suppressing my rage, I stood and forced a polite smile at the elders. 'Please enjoy the evening.'" Misty looked slightly embarrassed and glanced at Edward. "Did I say something wrong? I hope I didn't upset your little sister." Edward glared at me furiously, as if blaming me for ruining the mood. Before he could speak, I beat him to it. "I've got a date with my boyfriend tonight. If I don't leave now, I'll be late." Chapter 05. When did you get a boyfriend? I had one foot out the door when Edward grabbed my arm. How come I didn't know? With so many people watching, especially Misty, I flushed red. I yanked my arm away hard. "Whether I have a boyfriend or not, what's it got to do with you?" I snapped. "Even my parents haven't asked. Who are you to care?" "Edward," Uncle Lee said sternly, keeping his voice low. "Sit down. This is not proper behavior." I seized the chance to bow to the elders. "Uncle, Auntie, goodbye." From behind me came Misty's sweet voice. "Bianca's so beautiful, and she performs on stage a lot. She must have plenty of admirers. It's totally normal for her to be dating." I even saw a hickey peeking out under her scarf just now. Realizing her words might have crossed a line, she paused, then added with a bashful smile, "Maybe it's just our different personalities. Us painters are more quiet, and dancers, well, they tend to be a bit more open, but I respect every girl's choices." I didn't hear the rest of what they said about me. My style had always been bolder than most. She just wanted to elevate herself by throwing me under the bus. And as for Edward, I didn't even have to guess how he'd take her side and put me down. What none of them knew was that, while the boyfriend part was a lie, I was serious about leaving, about moving to City C. I started looking into houses there, thinking through how I'd handle my job once I relocated. I kept myself busy with planning, because only by staying busy could I stop thinking about Edward. We grew up together. He had always played the role of the warm-hearted big brother next door. He'd step in to protect me whenever someone picked on me. When I was 10, I begged him to stay late with me at the amusement park until 9 p.m. Both sets of parents were so worried. They ended up calling the police. They found us playing pretend in the sandpit and dragged us home. He took the blame, saying it was all his fault. That night, Uncle Lee beat him a dozen times with a feather duster. I cried and confessed it was actually my idea, but Edward just raised his eyebrows and insisted it was his fault. As we grew older, I became prettier. He grew more handsome too. People started calling us a golden couple. I used to think I'd been handed the perfect script in life. "When are you free?" A message from Edward popped up. I wiped away my tears. I didn't even finish typing a question mark before another message came through. "Edward, come get your stuff from my place. I'm inviting Misty over in a few days." I took a deep breath and calmed myself. Just 24 hours ago, we were curled up on the couch watching a romance movie. We made love deep into the night. And now, I gave a bitter laugh. I unpinned his chat and replied with just one word, okay. Chapter 06. That day, I locked myself in my room. Not long after I got back, my parents returned home too. City C is 1,000 miles away. My mom said gently, watching me cautiously, once you really go there, coming back won't be so easy. My dad hid behind his newspaper, but I could tell he was sneaking glances at me too. I put on my coat. The climate's better over there. Isn't it your dream to settle down there after retirement? Smiling, I wrapped an arm around my mom's shoulders. The only thing is, I haven't found a great job there yet. I'm thinking about opening a small dance studio of my own. As for future performance opportunities, you both know I was never obsessed with that. But, my mom frowned, hesitating. Bien. I glanced down at the time. It's fine. I mean it. I'm doing well. I'm clear-headed. You really don't have to worry about me. If anything, I added, you two should start thinking about money. I leaned in and gave my mom a light kiss on the cheek. I've got something to do. I'll head out first. I thought maybe time and distance would dull the pain, and I did feel calmer. My love for Edward had been sincere and passionate, even though I never said it aloud. At least I hadn't humiliated myself. I thought we'd part ways peacefully. I didn't expect I wouldn't even be able to get in the door. I stood outside, entering the passcode over and over again. Incorrect password. Incorrect password. Rage surged up inside me. When knocking got me no answer, reason finally returned. I remembered to call Edward. After a few busy tones, the call was hung up. By the 5th try, he sent me a message. On a date. Don't bother me. I let out a long breath, resisting the urge to swear. Password. I texted. A second later, a glaring red exclamation mark stabbed at my eyes. Edward had deleted me. I rubbed my temples. I was going to leave, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Screw it, I called a locksmith. Chapter 07. I had a fire in my chest and no intention of putting it out. I didn't even care about the hassle. I went straight to Edward's place, saying the building management needed to register the repair, and I required the property ownership certificate. Aunt Lee didn't even question me. She handed it over without hesitation. What would Edward do without you? Then realizing what she'd said, she laughed awkwardly. I took the documents straight to the locksmith. After an hour of hassle, I finally stepped back into what had been my home for nearly a year. I still remembered the day I moved in. Edward stood at the doorway with his hands in his pockets. Bianca, welcome home. I looked around. The carefully tended green plants, the skirts hanging on the balcony, the cosmetics arranged in the bathroom, the dining sets laid out with a sense of ritual. I stood up decisively, packed up my luxury designer clothes, branded handbags, and skincare products. As for the furniture we picked out together, I rolled up my sleeves and smashed it all. By the time the place was in shambles, I was exhausted. Just as I was about to leave, Edward walked in with several bags of groceries. He froze in the doorway, then stepped back out to check the apartment number. It took him a full 5 minutes before his face turned red with rage. Bianca, what the fuck is wrong with you? Chapter 08. I shrugged. You changed the passcode, ignored my calls, didn't reply to my messages. Edward stepped carefully across the mess in the living room. On tiptoe, after shoving the groceries into the fridge, he rubbed his temples and explained. I was on a date with Misty. If she overheard us calling each other all the time, what would she think of me? My heart still skipped a beat. Despite everything, I used to ask for us to date seriously. He always brushed it off. We're getting along well, he said. Misty's gentle and soft-tempered. I need to take it seriously. Move step by step. She's not like you. That's why when I'm with her, I don't call other girls. He sighed and looked at me with that familiar twinkle in his eyes. Bien. You haven't eaten, have you? I'll cook now. Eat before you go. Then, as if afraid I'd refuse, he added without waiting for a response. Just think of it as a farewell meal. Do me a favor. I watched him bustle about the kitchen, sniffled, and blinked back the heat in my eyes. An hour later, I'd confirmed there was nothing left in that house I wanted to take with me. Edward brought out the food, dish after dish filling the table. I even thought, Maybe in the future we could still pretend to be just ordinary friends. After all these years, I reached out with my chopsticks, just as Edward shouted, "Don't!" Startled, I froze. He rushed over, holding out a tiny round dish. "You can take a small bite of each dish. The rest, I'm taking to Misty while it's still hot." He raised the little plate, barely bigger than the palm of his hand. "Try each one and tell me which tastes best. I'll pack more of that for her. If you think one tastes bad, I won't bring it. I'll just leave it here for you to eat." Clack! I threw down my chopsticks. His hand was still hanging awkwardly in the air. I stood up so fast my chair scraped across the floor with a sharp, ugly screech. My voice was choked. "Edward, do you even realize? I never saw you as just a match or a hookup. I actually liked you." All those things I said. All those sweet words. My eyes were red as I stared straight at him. I meant every single one. I ignored the stunned look on his face and turned to leave. But now I finally understand how foolish I used to be. Chapter 09. From that day on, I completely let go of Edward. I threw myself into planning the move to City C with my parents. In the days that followed, after wrapping up work, I started researching how to run a dance studio and looked into professional development courses. When I received an invitation to a class reunion, my dad had already sold our old house in the suburbs and scraped together enough for the down payment on the new one. The classmate organizing the event was well connected and popular. So tonight, a lot of people would be there, including Edward. Of course, I didn't hesitate before replying in the group chat. "Bianca is in." After all, there were still many things I didn't know. I could use this chance to learn from others. I dressed up like usual and arrived on time for the gathering. As expected, I saw Edward and Misty there. To avoid trouble, I sat in the farthest corner from them. Maybe because the lighting above me was dim, Edward didn't notice me as he chatted with some classmates behind me. "Edward, man, didn't think you'd really win over Misty. But hey, what happened with your childhood sweetheart? You've been ditching our drinking nights for over 2 weeks. You guys broke up? Just like that?" I heard Edward reply nonchalantly with a simple I stayed calm, continued chatting with the senior sitting beside me, even exchanged contact info. "Hey, remember that bet we made back then? How long it'd take Edward to get the department's flower? I think it was a week." Damn, so many guys were after Bianca. That stunning beauty who could sing and dance but didn't give anyone the time of day. Who'd have thought Edward got her in just 1 week? I listened to their drunken jokes, casual mockery, and teasing. My grip tightened around the beer bottle. 5 seconds later, Edward spoke up softly. "Not true." His voice was quiet but clear. 5 days. And just like that, my strength drained out of me. Then I heard him say, "Now that you mention it, I kind of miss her." I stood up, only to be blocked by Misty. Chapter 10. Bianca. "Long time no see," Misty said. She casually slipped her arm through Edward's and gave a delicate, gentle smile. I gave her a polite nod, set the bottle of wine down on the floor, took a deep breath, and returned my focus to chatting with the senior next to me. I didn't notice Edward behind me, staring for a long time without looking away. I'd had 2 glasses of red wine, still very sober. On my way to the restroom, I touched up my makeup. Everyone said we were going to visit one of our old teachers afterward. One of them was the respected director of the dance association. She had always held me in high regard when I was a student. Of course, I had to go. Satisfied with my makeup, I opened the door. "Bianca?" Misty stood there in a flowing white dress, graceful and composed. "Hello," I responded. Just as I was about to walk past her, she suddenly grabbed my wrist. I winced from the pain and tried to pull away, only to find that despite her fragile appearance, her grip was shockingly strong. Misty glanced around to make sure no one was nearby. Then she leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "You lived with Edward for over half a year. Now that I've returned and ruined everything, you must be furious, right?" I stiffened. So she knew everything. But I quickly composed myself. I had always thought we were in a real relationship, living together out of love, not as some homewrecker. There was nothing shameful about that. Just in case, I discreetly opened my voice recording app. I tilted my head, yanked her hand off hard. "So what?" "Oh, Little Bianca, Misty murmured sweetly. You served my fiancé for over a year, for free. So devotedly. I should really thank you. Her fragile little flower facade vanished completely, replaced with blatant provocation in her eyes. But in the end, you got nothing. Did you? Edward didn't even give you an official status or title. To people who know, maybe it was just unannounced. But to those who don't, you looked like a sugar baby, or an escort who just moved in. Her gaze made my skin crawl as she looked me up and down. Well, it makes sense, Bianca. You really do dress the part. I think I'll have Edward get a full checkup, just in case he caught anything from your careless lifestyle. Then she flipped up my hair, pretending to inspect my clothes. Don't tell me you came to this party braless, just to seduce. I couldn't take it anymore. I raised my hand and slapped her across her perfect porcelain cheek. Smack. It rang out sharp and clear. Misty clutched her face, staggering back 2 steps, then shouted toward my back. Edward! Help me! Chapter 11. I heard rushed footsteps behind me, followed by Edward's angry roar. Bianca! I didn't turn around. I stepped forward in my heels, directly onto her canvas shoe. As Misty reached toward Edward in fake panic, I grabbed her hair with one hand and slapped her face again with the other. You're insane. Edward grabbed my wrist, but I didn't let go of her hair. I used his momentum to yank even harder. Misty shrieked and wailed. I'm not crazy, I shouted at the crowd, who clearly hadn't seen what happened. She called me a mistress, a whore, and tried to pull my clothes open to check underneath. I reached for my phone. I have proof. Enough, Edward roared, yanking me back, his grip tight. You've hated Misty from the start, and now you're just taking advantage of a moment alone to attack her. We all saw you hit her. He tugged me so hard I almost stumbled. Misty's been beaten to this state. And you? Not a scratch on you. Edward stared at me. Of course you'd do something like this. I know your temper. Remember when we were kids and you dragged me to the amusement park until our parents called the cops? Guess who had to clean up your mess? You hold grudges. Misty took what you wanted, so you lashed out. Apologize to Misty. I looked around. Every gaze was probing, judgmental. I let out a cold laugh. Fine, I'll apologize. Edward relaxed a little. See? You don't even have a boyfriend. You just made that up last time out of spite. I said I'll apologize. I repeated softly. Then I raised my voice, sharp and clear. Apologize my fucking ass. I stepped around Edward, faced Misty, and slapped her again, hard, right on the same cheek. I shook out my wrist, then looked calmly at the crowd. I'll send the recording to the group chat later. I smoothed down my slightly messy hair, flashed my signature smile. Enjoy the show, everyone. Chapter 12. That night, I went home. Later, I met with my teacher privately. Once everything was settled, I finally felt grounded. So I let go and moved forward. I had no time to focus on anything else. All my energy went into buying a house and starting my studio. I kept busy nonstop for a whole month. Then, our family finally boarded the plane and started our move. On the flight, my parents couldn't hide their happiness. From now on, their later years would be all about enjoyment, and I would work hard to become their support. Edward has requested to add you as a friend. Verification message. Where did you go? Verification message. I heard you moved? That can't be true, right? Verification message. Please accept. I was beyond annoyed. I blocked him outright. But half an hour later, Edward Lee called using Aunt Lee's phone. My mom looked at me awkwardly. I couldn't refuse, so I took the call. My mom said you guys moved. That's not true, right? His familiar voice felt like something from another life. Edward sounded anxious. You guys have lived there for decades. And my mom always said she'd be best friends with your mom forever. Maybe you just went on vacation and someone misunderstood? My tone was calm. We moved. We're thousands of miles away now. Even though we were still renting while waiting for the renovations to finish, hoping to move in before the Lunar New Year, there was no need to tell Edward that. He asked. I answered. After a long silence, I thought he might have hung up. I'll end the call now. Wait. He stammered, sounding like a kid who'd done something wrong. That day with Misty, I apologized to you in the group chat. You didn't reply. Did you not see it? Oh, I saw it. Just a few minutes after I posted the recording in the group. The whole chat exploded. Under pressure. Edward tagged me and apologized. He said he'd explain everything in person, that he'd bring a gift and sincerely apologize. I never replied. Now that he brought it up, I answered. I saw it. Before he could say more, I cut him off. Anything else? He sounded disappointed. After all, I used to chatter endlessly to him if we went even a few days without seeing each other. After a long pause, he spoke, this time with what sounded like calm realization. You're still mad about Misty, aren't you? You only said you had a boyfriend out of spite. Even now, I'm sure it's just a game. Since you've been gone, I've thought a lot. What I felt for Misty, it was just a passing thing. And everything that happened, I can explain. But what I feel for you, that's real, Edward. I said, my voice flat and unshaken, like I was talking to a stranger on the street. We were just partners, weren't we? I hope you find someone who's an even better match. I had more important things to do. In the end, I said, don't contact me again. You didn't hesitate when you deleted me, but now you're all clingy? I paused, then added, you're a total nuisance. Chapter 13. Maybe it was retirement. Or maybe it really was the climate here. My parents looked healthier than ever. If it weren't for needing to return home to handle the property transfer before the new year, they wouldn't have wanted to go back at all. I can just go back by myself, I said. Eyes still on the documents in my hands. I can handle it. My parents exchanged a look. No, we wouldn't feel comfortable. Besides, the Lee family invited us to spend Little New Year together. We'll go to the gathering, then hurry back in time for Lunar New Year's Eve. It lines up perfectly. I hadn't seen Edward in nearly half a year. Turns out, the person I once thought I couldn't live without really wasn't that important after all. Bien, you're even more beautiful now. Aunt Lee greeted me with her usual enthusiasm, grabbing my hand as soon as I walked through the door. Look at that presence, you carry yourself so well. So poised. Edward, surprisingly, seemed nervous. He stood in the back wearing a plain white t-shirt, smiling cautiously. Hi, Uncle Zhao. Auntie Zhao. Bien, you've lost weight. Have things been hard? There was worry in his eyes that he couldn't hide. Reflected in them was the same me, bright and confident as always. I smiled at him, polite but distant, and looked down slightly. It's fine, just watching my weight. After a full meal and some wine, emotions ran high. Aunt Lee held my mother and cried. Then, with a choked voice and a hard look, she said, you know, I really love Bien. I treat her like my own daughter. That Misty girl. She's been scheming from the beginning. In college, Edward was immature and had a bit of a crush on her. She played hard to get, ran off abroad, wanting Edward to chase her, but he gave up. After graduation, he started working and was with Bien ever since. Then Misty got jealous, orchestrated some accidental reunion with Edward. She scoffed. You know what they say, the most dangerous hunter always appears as the prey. Aunt Lee laughed twice, and Edward walked right into it. But thankfully, he realized his mistake. After you all left and he couldn't see Bien anymore, this brat drank himself into a stomach hemorrhage and ended up in the hospital. He kept murmuring your name. Honestly, it's not too late. Neither of you is married yet. There's still a chance. She waved her hand. Edward immediately stood in front of me. Aunt Lee gestured like a stage director. Have Edward apologize to Bien properly. In front of all of us. Get on his knees if he has to. I looked up at Edward. Still handsome, but there was something weary in his face now. He'd clearly aged. His eyes were red. Bien. I didn't cherish what we had. The one I've always loved. It's always been you. Auntie. I interrupted, turning my gaze away from Edward and smiling at her instead. I have a boyfriend now. He's really kind and treats me wonderfully. I'll definitely bring him around next time, so you can meet him. Aunt Lee's smile froze. Her expression turned sad as she looked at Edward. Edward seemed to break down a little. No, that's not possible. Didn't we say we were going to get married? Don't you remember? We grew up together. We always said we'd be husband and wife someday. When we were kids playing house. You were the mom. I was the dad, and we were together almost a full year. We were happy. All of Edward's restraint collapsed. His voice even broke a little. We almost got married, didn't we? You're just angry, right? Like last time? This is all just a bluff, isn't it? My dad slammed his palm on the table and stood up. So you're saying Bien lied to you? That our entire family lied to you? Tom is a fine young man. He respects us deeply, even though Bien only just accepted his feelings. We all believe those two will make it to marriage. Afraid my father would get too worked up, I rushed over and gently pressed a hand to his chest. I looked at Edward and said calmly, Edward, stop bringing up the childhood engagement. It was just a casual joke from our parents. It never meant anything. You were the one who said that, don't you remember? In the end, the night ended on a sour note. When we walked out, thick, feathery snow was falling from the sky. I had just gotten into the car when I saw Edward standing alone in the wind, looking fragile and lost. His eyes red as he stared at me. It was just a moment of novelty. I was foolish. Only after losing you did I realize how precious the things I once had so easily truly were. Please, just give me one more chance, he said, his voice hoarse and shaking. I'm begging you. Before I could answer, I was distracted by a figure approaching in the distance. Under the streetlight stood a tall man, graceful and straight-backed. Snow had already blanketed his hair. I whispered in disbelief, Tom? He turned around, face lighting up even though the tip of his nose was bright red from the cold. From inside his coat, he pulled out a bouquet of flowers and strode toward me. You once said you wanted to watch the first snowfall with the person you love the most, didn't you? I looked at him, heart aching. He had worked overtime last night, yet still caught a red-eye flight, just for a joke I'd made. Tom smoothed out the crease between my brows. So, he said gently, I'm here. Then he bent slightly and said to my parents, Uncle, Auntie, I haven't had any alcohol. I'll drive tonight. The scene was so heartwarming that we nearly forgot. Edward was still standing there. He stared blankly as Tom wrapped his arms around me. And at last, he whispered, I'm sorry. His voice was small. Maybe he thought I didn't hear it. But in my heart, I replied silently, it's okay. Not for myself, but for the Edward who, once upon a time, had held me with such warmth. Chapter 14. Thank you for driving, I said to the hired driver before preparing to walk to the hotel with Tom. I looked at Edward, whose expression was shattered. Well then, Edward, I said goodbye. Then I turned and melted into Tom's embrace. As I turned away, I caught a glimpse of Edward out of the corner of my eye, collapsing to his knees in the snow. But that had nothing to do with us anymore. Tom held me tightly in his arms, resting his chin gently atop my head, whispering with all the tenderness in the world, if we can share a snowfall like this, then in this lifetime, we'll grow old together under the same white sky. He lowered his head and kissed me softly on the forehead, surrounded by happiness. I thought, before anything else, the first thing you must learn is how to treasure it. Story 2. I told Kevin I wanted a divorce. I don't want anything except the money. Kevin sneered with his hands in his pockets. You're even giving up on the son you love so much. I'm giving him up too, because, for his 5th birthday wish, my son said, can Dad and Mom get a divorce? I want Aunt Melissa to be my mom. Chapter 1. I handed the divorce papers to Kevin. He looked at them as if they were just another ordinary document on his desk. His gaze was cold and distant. Perhaps the only time I felt his passion was during those relentless nights. Diana, if you want to throw a tantrum, at least choose the right place. This is the office. He was certain I wouldn't go through with the divorce. To him, this was just another jealous ploy. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I had been waiting in the guest room, just like any ordinary visitor, for 3 whole hours, all the while enduring the pitiful glances from others. How could that be considered a tantrum? When Miss Melissa comes to see the boss, she doesn't have to wait even a minute. So, the rumors about Kevin hating his wife are true? They were true. Their boss really didn't like his wife. The person he liked had always been Melissa. Kevin, I want a divorce, and I want it quickly. Diana, what are you doing? Only then did Kevin lower his eyes to look at the papers. Diana, you're asking for just this much money in the divorce? Yes. When I got pregnant by accident, he had originally offered me the sum as compensation to keep me away from him. But I didn't leave, because I am a character in a transmigrated novel, assigned a task by the system. Giving birth to Lucas and marrying Kevin were my tasks, no matter how hard I tried. Though, I couldn't warm Kevin's heart. There is no future for us. This money will be my delayed compensation. The 50 million yuan on the agreement was a drop in the bucket for him. But for me, it was a fortune, enough to live comfortably. Kevin stood up, looking down at me from above. His tailored, expensive suit made him appear even taller and more imposing. He sneered with his hands in his pockets. Just the money? You're not even keeping the son you love so much? I smiled faintly. No, I'm not. Chapter 2. I used to love Lucas dearly. After all, he is my flesh and blood. For 5 years, I poured all my patience and love into every step of his growth. Maybe Kevin's indifference to Lucas was because of his hatred for me. When Lucas was born, Kevin's only reaction was a simple remark. He looks a lot like Diana. After that, he handed Lucas over to the housekeeper without a second thought. Strangely, Lucas adored Kevin. He had an incredible talent for language. At just 3 years old, he could coldly say to me, "Dad doesn't come home because of you." Mom. I brushed it off as childish nonsense. But by the time he turned 4, he met Melissa for the first time after she returned from abroad following her divorce. When he got home, he said to the housekeeper, "No wonder Dad likes Aunt Melissa. I like her too. Aunt Melissa is gentler than Mom, and she makes me happier. All because I didn't let him eat too many sweets." He pouted angrily. As I walked out of the kitchen, I heard his complaints. Holding back the discomfort in my heart, I softly said, "Lucas, Mommy will make you some new candy." Mommy's handmade candy with snow pear and hawthorn. It's delicious and healthy. But he grabbed the candy I made and threw it in the trash with force. He shouted, "I don't want your garbage. I want the fancy candy Aunt Melissa brought from Italy. So what if I get cavities?" I stared at him in a daze. How much my son resembled his father. They were both so cold. Especially on his 5th birthday. Both father and son invited Melissa. While I was putting in the candles, the long-lost voice of the system suddenly echoed in my mind. "Host. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm back." Even though no one else could hear it, I instinctively walked outside the room. "Host. Your mission is complete. You've earned enough points to go back now." In my original world, I had fallen into a coma due to an accident. I made a deal with the system, complete the task, and I would wake up. You can choose to stay if you want. After all, you have a family now. In your original world, you were all alone. While I hesitated, Lucas made the decision for me. Just as I stepped back into the room, I heard his birthday wish. His voice was clear and loud, with no intention of hiding it from me. "Can Dad and Mom get a divorce? I want Aunt Melissa to be my mom." Everyone froze. Kevin frowned slightly. "Pick another wish." Melissa covered her mouth, laughing. "Oh, you can't say that. What a cute kid." But the smugness in her eyes was unmistakable. I smiled. Then I turned to the system and said, "Take me home. I don't want to wait another second." Chapter 3. But the system told me bad news. Ever since the central system took on too many hosts for 2nd and 3rd missions, there's now a cooling-off period before you can leave the system. I was stunned. The system cleared its throat. "It's like the divorce cooling-off period you humans have. You need to wait." Wait for what? Damn it. I silently reminded myself to stay polite and asked, "How long?" 3 years. 3 years? System, are you afraid that by the time you finally get your act together, the whole thing will have gone cold? The system paused for a moment. "Host, your insults are quite sophisticated." After 3 seconds of silence, it added, "As compensation for my long absence, I'll add an extra third to your points, allowing you to wake up from your vegetative state in perfect health." Fine, but let me finalize my divorce first. That's why I'm standing in Kevin's office right now. "Kevin, let's get divorced." Kevin lit a cigarette with a sharp flick. He blew out a smoke ring. smirking with a devilish charm. Diana, have you forgotten? Who was it that said 5 years ago she would die without Lucas? Those were my words. That year, Kevin heard about Melissa's marriage abroad. He spent an entire night tormenting me. The next day, I developed a high fever and lay burning up in our house for 3 days. Alone. In my dazed state, I forgot to take the medicine. Later, I found out I was pregnant with Lucas. When Kevin found out, his initial response was cold. He told me to get rid of the baby. I remembered the system's warning: if you abort the baby, the mission fails. You know the consequences. Host. So, I begged Kevin, if I lose this child, I'll die. If I hadn't begged him, with his ruthless approach to business, he would have had plenty of ways to deal with me. Kevin was cruel to everyone, including himself. His only weakness was Melissa, the girl he grew up with in the orphanage who once saved him. Later, she was adopted by a wealthy family. Kevin had a wild streak from a young age, fighting his way up from being a street thug to becoming a business mogul, all to gain the approval of Melissa's adoptive parents so he could marry her. But before he could give her the massive pink diamond he had prepared for her, the news of her marriage reached him. It was much later that I learned why Kevin suddenly proposed to me. It was because of something Melissa said. Kevin, I got married. I hope to hear your good news soon. Chapter 4. I looked at Kevin's handsome face, but all I could think was, I hope I never have to see him again. I calmly said, since both you and your son like Melissa so much, after the divorce, you two can start a family, and everyone will be happy. Isn't that a good idea? Kevin narrowed his eyes on me. One of his perfectly shaped hands lifted my chin. He sneered, playing hard to get. Then, his smile vanished as he coldly said, if it's a game you want, I'm in. And one more thing, after the divorce, without my permission, you are never allowed to see Lucas. Was that a threat? In the past, it would have been a devastating blow to me, because love makes you vulnerable. But now, I don't want to love anyone anymore. So, I have no weaknesses. Under his provocative gaze, I calmly replied, all right. He froze for a moment, his eyes darkening. Grabbing the pen, he swiftly scribbled a few strokes on the agreement. Then he tossed a copy at me. I picked it up and turned to leave. Kevin clenched his jaw. Diana, get out of the Jiang family's house tonight. Fine. My emotions were eerily steady, but then I paused, smiling as I asked him, we haven't even gotten the divorce certificate yet, and you're kicking me out already? I'm not leaving for free. Please arrange for the alimony payment in advance. Thanks. A trace of anger flickered across Kevin Jiang's face, but based on what I know of him, he's fairly generous with money. I wouldn't be surprised if I received the $50 million tomorrow. Good enough. Chapter 5. Kevin felt an inexplicable irritation as he watched Diana walk out of the office without looking back. At that moment, his assistant came in with some documents. He had been with Kevin for many years, practically a confidant. Boss, is Diana really going through with the divorce? Kevin, puffing on his cigarette, responded coldly. She's just acting out. She wouldn't dare. How could she bear to leave Lucas behind? The assistant chuckled. True. She loves you and the child so much. She's probably just throwing a little tantrum. A little comfort from you will sort it out. No need to comfort her. From what I know of her, within 3 months, she'll come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. The assistant smiled, placing the contracts on the desk before leaving. Kevin gazed out from the 30th floor, at the thousands of lights flickering below. For some reason, he thought of Diana from years ago. The first time she was with him, she had been nervous and scared, like a helpless little rabbit. Her eyes had turned red, her voice trembling. She had said things that made no sense to him. Kevin, I'm not just here to complete a mission. I really like you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this with you. Kevin, please be good to me from now on, okay? Kevin had silenced her rambling by sealing her lips with his own, and silenced her soft crying for the entire night. All these years, Diana had been obedient and submissive. The only thing that had angered him was when she had the nerve to use their child to trap him, and absurdly said, if the child is gone, the mission will fail, and I'll cease to exist. He had to punish her for that. So for 5 years, he never showed her any kindness. After all, she had nowhere to go, and he assumed she would stay by his side until the day she died. Her naive pleas echoed in his ears once more. Kevin, I want to have a cute child. A family of 3. Living in a cozy little home. Wouldn't that be nice? No. A person like him had no desire for a family. He had never had a family growing up. Now that everything was within his grasp, he needed it even less. The day Diana asked for a divorce, for some reason, he skipped a dinner meeting and came home early. Where's Diana? The housekeeper quietly replied. Madam moved out this afternoon. Kevin only felt more irritated. Though he didn't show it, he merely sneered. She's putting on quite the act. With that, he walked into his study, paying no further attention. Chapter 6. After receiving the divorce papers, I went home. I packed a few simple things and was ready to leave. Lucas was sitting in the living room, playing on his tablet with a candy in his mouth. Colorful wrappers littered the floor. He glanced up at me and said indifferently, Dad said I can have them. Aunt Melissa gave them to me, so don't bother. I smiled. I don't care. You can eat 100 of them if you want. I crouched down and pinched his cheek. You're the one who will get cavities. Not me. Lucas. I'm leaving. Where to? Making room for your new mom. I won't be coming back here anymore. Lucas frowned, his expression a mirror of his father's. Mom, stop talking nonsense. Dad said you're an orphan, and if you don't cling to him, you've got nowhere else to go. Mom, grow up. Will you? Aunt Melissa would never act so childish. You're way too old to be running away from home. Just go. Mom, I won't miss you. He lowered his head and continued playing his game. In the past, I would have gently taken away his tablet. Then I would have said, how about Mom playing with your Legos? How about Mom taking you swimming? How about Mom reading you a storybook? I would have sacrificed so much of my time for self-improvement just to provide him with quality time. Now, I don't care anymore. Whoever wanted to deal with him could. All right, Lucas. Let's hope you can keep that tough attitude. With that, I dragged my small suitcase out of the Jiang family's house. The warm sunlight hit me. It stung my eyes a little, but 4 words came to mind: face the sun and live. Chapter 7. I rented an apartment in a boutique community, 1 unit per floor with 2 elevators. No need to buy, after all. I wouldn't be able to take it with me in 3 years. The neighborhood was scenic and pleasant, and when I opened the window, I could see the ocean, but I could also see someone walking toward the sea, a tiny figure, slowly heading alone toward the waves. Instinctively, I rushed downstairs in my slippers. Across a road and a strip of greenery was the beach. I scooped up her small body in my arms. Where are your parents? The little girl looked about 3 years old, her round eyes like big grapes. Her eyes were wet, as if she had been crying, but she didn't say a word, just tightly clutched the hem of her dress. Sophia, a young, handsome man walked over. I hadn't noticed before, but he had been sitting on a hammock under a tree on the beach, watching her the whole time. Thank you, he said, but don't worry, she wouldn't have gone any further. I was watching. He reached out to take the girl. Sophia, let's go home with Dad. But the girl clung to my neck, refusing to let go. Her soft, little voice whispered 2 words. Hold me. The man froze for a moment, then smiled. This is the first time Sophia's ever asked a stranger to hold her. The little girl was soft and smelled like milk. So cuddly I couldn't bring myself to push her away. I had no choice but to carry her back to the community. To my surprise, they lived next door. The man thought for a moment and said, Sophia seems to really like you. I know you're single and currently unemployed. It's just the 2 of us. Father and daughter. I live a clean life. No bad habits. I'm a doctor. I handed the child back to him, in a voice low enough that the child couldn't hear. I said, even if you're a doctor, you shouldn't be using your kid to hit on women and prying into my personal information. You look like a male model, but your behavior is so sleazy. He stared at me, stunned. Diana. I was just asking if you could help take care of Sophia for a while, at least until I find a nanny she likes. Of course. I'll pay you whatever you ask. Aw, so that's what he meant. He cleared his throat. And about your personal information, I know it because I'm your landlord. After confirming the details, I realized he was indeed the landlord. I've always been someone who can admit my mistakes and adjust accordingly. Sorry, Mr. Landlord. I'm the one who was being sleazy. Chapter 8. Maybe it was the sight of that little girl's pitiful eyes that softened me. I agreed to temporarily help take care of little Sophia. She's very quiet and doesn't talk much. When she's not at preschool, she often brings over her little stool and sits quietly, watching me arrange flowers or paint. After I finish each task, she claps her tiny hands and praises me. So amazing. Diana, you're so amazing. I had her call me by my name. I like it that way. Being friends with the child. Sometimes, I get lost in thought for a moment. Lucas never did anything like that. He would always complain. Mom, this is so boring. Play Legos with me. Sophia is such a sweet and adorable little creature. Truly a healing presence. The only odd thing about her is that she often cries out for her parents in her sleep. She wakes up with her eyes wet. I feel so bad for her, so I hold her gently and comfort her in a soft voice. I give her one of my homemade pear and hawthorn lollipops. She pops it in her mouth, her eyes squinting into happy little crescents. She gives me a kiss, sweet with the taste of fruit. When her dad, Sam, gets home from work, she proudly tells him, Dad, Diana's candy tastes better than the ones you buy. Sometimes, she doesn't even want to finish it in one go, nibbling on it slowly. I laughed. Go ahead and eat it. If you like it, I'll make more. It turns out that the things Lucas never cared for are treasures to someone else. Before the divorce, my whole life revolved around Lucas. Even if I left the house for a short time, I'd worry about him getting hurt or falling. Maybe having Sophia around helped. Since leaving the Jiang family, I barely think about Lucas or anything from that life. In fact, the housekeeper has contacted me several times. Lucas is having trouble falling asleep without your bedtime stories. He'll get used to it. Lucas has a toothache. Would you come back to be with him? No, I'm not a doctor. Chapter 9. A few days later, I unexpectedly ran into Lucas. Sam had gone out of town for a conference, and I was helping by picking up and dropping off Sophia for a few days. But I had overlooked one detail. Sophia's new preschool was the same one Lucas attended. Sam really spared no expense, sending her to such an outrageously expensive private school. I carried Sophia out of the car and dropped her off. That's when I bumped into Lucas. He was getting out of the car, and Kevin was sitting there with his usual stoic expression. Lucas opened his mouth, ready to call out Mom, but the words got stuck in his throat. Even though we're divorced, he's still my son, an old acquaintance. I greeted him casually. Hi, Lucas. But he didn't respond, puffing up like a little blowfish, stomping angrily into the classroom. And Kevin, my ex-husband, was also an old acquaintance I didn't care to greet. I didn't expect him to step out of the car, lowering himself to speak first. I told you, without my permission, you're not allowed to see Lucas. I laughed in disbelief. I didn't see him. It was just a coincidence. Believe it or not, I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Kevin let out a derisive snort behind me. Diana, how long are you going to keep up this tough act? Chapter 10. Diana had been away for more than a month. Kevin didn't understand. She was just a slender woman. After all, why did the house feel so much emptier without her? But it wasn't something that really bothered him. It was Lucas who cried all the time. He kept pestering the housekeeper, asking, when is Mom coming home? Kevin couldn't figure out how he felt about Lucas. Maybe because he had been abandoned as a child, left near a garbage dump. He had never experienced what it felt like to have parents. So, he didn't quite know how to be a father. Stop crying. What does a boy look like when he's always crying? Lucas sniffled. Dad, can you tell me a bedtime story like Mom? No, you don't have to sleep if you don't want to. Lucas blinked in surprise. In the end, Kevin sat by Lucas's little bed and started telling him a story. The more Kevin talked, the more irritated he became. He should be in his study, reviewing financial reports. Why was he sitting here reading children's books? With a sharp clap, he closed the book. Lights out, sleep or don't. It's up to you. Either way, he wasn't telling another story. Lucas pouted but reluctantly slipped under the covers. For the first time, Kevin felt that Diana's impulsive decision to leave had disrupted the order of his life. That frustration festered until he saw her at Lucas's preschool a few days later. The annoyance seemed to fade a little. Of course, she couldn't stay away from her son. She must have deliberately chosen the one day he personally took Lucas to school. She was just being stubborn, acting out. Why give up being Mrs. Kevin to cause all this drama over a divorce? Housekeeper, give Lucas a few days off from school. He doesn't need to go. Kevin wanted Diana to waste a trip. Want to see your son? Fine, beg for it. But 3 days later, the housekeeper hesitantly reported, Madam is still going to the preschool every day. Boss, it seems Madam is dropping off someone else's child. She hasn't made any effort to see Lucas. Kevin paused in disbelief. Chapter 11. Sam kept his word. By the 3rd month of me helping with Sophia, he had found a gentle nanny to look after her. Out of habit, I still helped when I had free time. Saying I was looking after her wasn't quite right. It felt more like we were keeping each other company. When Sam wasn't busy, he often cooked for me. Maybe it was because of his medical profession. He would always debone the fish first or cut the meat off the bone before cooking. But I had to admit, it tasted pretty good. Each time, I felt a mix of fear and satisfaction as I finished the meal. After dinner, Sophia would sit at the small table in the living room, playing with magnetic tiles as usual. We would sit on the couch, chatting. There was an inexplicable sense of peace and tranquility in the air. I heard from the nanny that Sophia has been calling out for her parents again in her sleep. I said. Sam gave a quiet She needs time to adjust to the new nanny. I couldn't help but ask. Did you do something that upset her? Making her cry in her sleep? Sam lowered his voice. Sophia's parents passed away in an accident last year. Sophia needs time to adapt emotionally. I froze for a moment. Then who are you? A trafficker? Sam couldn't help but smile. What are you thinking? I'm her uncle. After my sister passed, I adopted her. I raised her as my daughter so she wouldn't be treated differently by others. I patted his shoulder. That's pretty responsible of you. Suddenly, Sam leaned in close. I could even smell the faint scent of fresh grass on him. Diana, do you think a man like me, single, raising a child, could still attract a woman? Of course. You're handsome, good at your job, and, most importantly, you're caring. Do you like me? The conversation took a sharp turn. I was caught off guard. I can't. Why not? In 3 years, I'm going back home. Sam's soft smile faded. There was a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Diana, is it because you still can't forget your ex-husband? I laughed. How could that be? I heard he's getting married soon. Sam's eyelashes fluttered, and his eyes brightened. There was a barely concealed excitement in his voice. Really? Should I send him a grand gift to congratulate him on his wedding? I blinked in confusion. Sam, why are you so excited about my ex-husband getting married? He looked as if it was his own ex-husband getting married. Chapter 12. It had been nearly 6 months. There were no signs that Diana intended to come back. She seemed to have left cleanly and decisively. Kevin was busy every day, and thoughts of Diana rarely crossed his mind. Lucas had also mostly stopped crying, but he often sat, staring blankly at the wooden puppet Diana had made for him. The housekeepers took good care of him, so Kevin had no concerns. But Melissa had been hinting at something for a while now. Kevin, do you think a pink diamond would look good on my finger? Rumors were circulating that Kevin was going to marry Melissa soon. Kevin wasn't sure if Diana had heard the rumors. Melissa had been the girl he liked for as long as he could remember. Maybe childhood memories leave the deepest impressions. When he first arrived at the orphanage, he had been thin and weak, but his eyes were fierce, like a wild cub refusing to give in. Because of that, he was often bullied by the leader of the orphanage kids. One day, they had beaten him up badly. It was Melissa who ran to get the director, making the group scatter. Melissa handed him a fruit candy, smiling sweetly. Here, it's very sweet. Yes, it was sweet, the sweetest thing he had ever tasted as a child. He never doubted that Melissa was the woman he loved most. And yet, deep down, a small part of him seemed to disagree. For example, he found himself unexpectedly driving to Diana's apartment. He watched as Diana, an unfamiliar handsome man, and a sweet little girl laughed and walked into the community together. He recognized the man. It surprised him a little that Diana knew someone like that. When Diana came out alone, he blocked her way, looking at her with a half smile. Staying this calm this time? Diana froze for a moment when she saw him, but said nothing. Shouldn't she be happy that he had come? Wasn't this her chance to reconcile? Her silence irritated Kevin for some reason. Diana, you know my temper. Once I've made a decision, I won't change it. If you still want Lucas, move back home. Otherwise, once I marry Melissa, you won't have a chance anymore. Diana's expression was just as calm as it had been 6 months ago when she asked for a divorce in his office. Congratulations. Thank you for going through the trouble of coming to invite me to the wedding personally. A sharp pain pierced Kevin's chest. An inexplicable anger flared up inside him. Diana, do you think you've caught a big fish now? Chapter 13. I blinked, surprised. What big fish? Kevin sneered. The Crown Prince of South City. Sam. I vaguely remembered Kevin mentioning him before. In the business world, Sam's family in South City was the toughest competitor. They controlled both legal and illegal territories. With immense wealth, Sam might seem like just a simple doctor, but he's actually the only son of the family. Eventually, he'll go back to inherit the family business. Do you think a family like theirs would ever accept a divorced woman like you? That comment hit a nerve. What's wrong with being divorced? Is being divorced a woman's fault? Many women get divorced simply because they had bad luck and ended up with scumbags. Kevin, it's lucky you've got some money. Otherwise, with that bad temper of yours, your fondness for emotional coldness in marriage, and the way you pick fights with your ex-wife even after the divorce, you'd be a lifelong bachelor back in my village. Kevin, uncharacteristically, was at a loss for words and his face darkened, but I couldn't help feeling a bit satisfied. Ignoring his sour expression, I turned to leave. Unexpectedly, I found Sam standing nearby, having overheard at least part of the conversation. I cleared my throat. I'm usually quite gentle. You know, I'm not always like this. Do you believe me? Sam nodded. I believe you. As we walked, we both exchanged a glance and, without a word, burst into a shared smile. I asked, "What are you smiling about?" Diana, you're kind of adorable when you're mad. Of course, and I think you made some great points. I may not be a teenage girl anymore, but being complimented by a handsome man who's clearly interested in you still makes your cheeks heat up. I quickly walked ahead, trying to hide it. Sam followed at a relaxed pace. Diana, the most important thing is, I control my own marriage. It has nothing to do with my family. Diana, did you hear me? Chapter 14. A week before Kevin's wedding, to my surprise, Lucas came to visit me, accompanied by the housekeeper. Lucas was almost 8 now. He had lost his baby fat and was growing taller, looking more and more like Kevin. Hi, Lucas. His eyes were slightly red. Mom. I took Lucas upstairs. Did your dad agree to let you come? I knew the housekeeper wouldn't have brought Lucas without Kevin's permission. Lucas nodded. Mom. Have you completely abandoned me? I smiled a little. I haven't abandoned you. It's always been you who didn't want me. Then why won't you come home? I sighed softly. I divorced your father. Divorced people don't live together. Lucas turned his head, eyes downcast, staring at the floor. Can't you come back for my sake? How can you say you haven't abandoned me when you're like this? Lucas, why should I go back just because of you? Even though Lucas was still young, he was very clever. I didn't treat him like a small child in conversation because he understood what I was saying. There was a time when, driven by the system's mission and my desperation to survive, and because I lacked love, I clung too hard to the idea of having the perfect family, a loving husband and a cute child. I was so attached to it. But the tighter you hold on to something, the faster it slips through your fingers. Like sand, for the past 5 years, I revolved around you and your father. Losing sight of myself. That kind of self-sacrificing devotion doesn't make sense. It didn't make me happy. You have to love yourself first before you can love others. Lucas. There's nothing wrong with me loving myself first. Lucas seemed to understand only partially. He mumbled softly, "Then why didn't you take me with you when you got divorced?" I looked at him seriously and said, "I could have taken you with me. I could have stayed in this world. And after all, I did give birth to you. So I do have a responsibility to you." But Lucas, think about it carefully. If you live with me, you won't have luxury cars, nor a large inheritance, nor a team of maids and drivers catering to your every need. All I can offer is the simple life you see in front of you. Would you want that? Lucas hung his head in silence. I know my own child. He has his own choices. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, a pink, cheerful little bundle launched herself into my arms. Diana. Diana! I want some pear hawthorn candy. Sophia blinked when she saw Lucas. Diana. Is this handsome brother your son? I smiled and nodded. Sophia grabbed a handful of candy from the table and handed it to Lucas. Big brother. Eat this. Diana makes it so yummy. It's healthy and delicious, way better than store-bought candy. Lucas took the candy, and then, he suddenly started crying. Mom, I'm sorry. I knew he was remembering the time he had thrown away the candy I made for him like it was trash. Sometimes, the things you throw away with your own hands are hard to get back. Love is the same. Chapter 15. Kevin married Melissa. The wedding was grand and extravagant, making headlines everywhere. In the pictures, Melissa was all smiles, but Kevin's face was expressionless. Lucas, dressed in an elegant little suit as the ring bearer, mirrored his father's lack of emotion. His wish from when he was 5 years old had finally come true. All I could say was, "Son, this was your wish, so now you have to live with it." Strangely enough, the people most excited about Kevin's wedding were Sam and Sophia. The two of them insisted on taking me to a resort for a vacation. Diana, there's a beautiful starry sky over there. We can even set off fireworks. Sophia twirled around happily. I love fireworks the most. Seeing Sophia gradually come out of the shadow of losing her parents and become happier day by day made me feel happy too. Under the night sky, we ate hot pot and cut watermelon. The stars in the sky were countless, and fireflies buzzed around with their glowing tails, while the frogs in the nearby pond croaked in harmony. Honestly, this is the kind of life I've always wanted. Sophia handed me a slice of watermelon and said, Diana, your ex-husband got married. Are you sad? I nearly choked on the watermelon. Who told you to ask that? Daddy didn't tell me. I asked on my own. Sam's hand trembled as he held his teacup. Diana, don't be sad. You still have us. Even if that handsome brother calls someone else mom. But you still have me. I can be your baby, okay? I laughed and pinched her chubby cheek. Is there anything else you want to say? Just say it all at once. Sophia cleared her throat like an adult. If you think having me as your baby isn't enough, my dad can be your husband too. This time, it was my hand that trembled. Little Sophia, as if the situation wasn't awkward enough, loudly turned to Sam, who seemed very busy doing absolutely nothing. Right, Daddy? You can, right? You can be Diana's husband, right? Sam quietly responded with a soft but the tips of his ears turned red. He then looked up at the sky, at Sophia, at the trees, at the flowers, anywhere but me. Chapter 16. Happy times always seem to fly by like they've been sped up. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. To be honest, I had a really good time during the 3 years after the divorce. My only regret? Not divorcing Kevin sooner. Host. On the 3rd of next month, at 4 p.m., the program will activate. Do you want to stay or leave? The system seemed surprised when it heard my answer. Are you sure you want to leave? Diana, I thought you'd choose to stay. Chapter 17. Kevin couldn't tell if marrying Melissa had been more about love or about anger toward Diana. Life after the wedding had been dull. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had changed. He had inexplicably developed a habit of drinking heavily. A few glasses of strong liquor would numb his nerves. And for a brief moment, he'd feel alive. Otherwise, when sober, He always felt like Diana's shadow still lingered in the house. Impossible to dispel. Damn it, how is it that even drunk, I still see Diana? The voice that responded was cold. Much colder than Diana's soft, warm voice. I'm Melissa, not Diana. Obviously. Kevin, if Diana is still in your heart, why the hell did you marry me? The alcohol made his head pound, leaving him unable to think clearly. Was Diana still in his heart? No, right? He had always been cold toward Diana, feeling she was neither important or essential. Or was she? He vaguely remembered that when Melissa had married abroad, he had felt only a slight sadness, without lingering regrets or the thought that he should have chased after her. But after divorcing Diana, it felt like being cut slowly with a dull knife, never noticing the pain at first. But now the wounds were tearing open, hurting deeply. In truth, he had wanted a warm home, too. In the past, he had been stubbornly convinced that he didn't need one. Melissa, what do you want? A divorce. Is that it? Living in constant arguments and insults was exhausting. She must be tired, too. It turns out, not loving someone is an incredibly tiring thing. Melissa bit her lip, her eyes red at the edges. Kevin, you were the one who wanted to marry me. I'll never divorce you. Not even if I die. We'll just keep torturing each other for the rest of our lives. Neither of us will find peace. With that, Melissa stormed out, slamming the door in her high heels. Kevin glanced across the hallway and saw Lucas, expressionless, closing his own door. Was this even a home anymore? Damn it. It's like three strangers living together. The wine glass in his hand smashed against the wall, shattering on impact. Broken, completely broken, and it would never be whole again. Chapter 18. The night before my departure. I couldn't sleep. It felt like when I was a child, staying awake the night before a big trip. I had already told Lucas and Sophia about my leaving. Lucas remained calm, but when I said I was leaving, his eyes reddened. Mom, I can't make you stay. You are your own person first, and I respect your decision. Thank you, Lucas, for understanding. We're mother and son. After all, there's no deep hatred between us. But we're not particularly close either. The bond of blood remains, yet it's faint. We respect each other, and that seems to fit us. Sophia cried until her eyes were swollen, trying to act all grown up. Diana, I'll be okay. If you want to go home, go home. But up there, you better think about me. Boo-hoo. I wiped her tears tenderly. You're making it sound like I'm going to heaven. I'm just going home. Sweetheart, don't cry so hard. Sophia pouted. My dad's been crying secretly too. I paused. Sam, crying? A man over 6 feet tall? I hadn't seen him in over a week. I'd heard the hospital was incredibly busy, so much so that he barely had time to sleep. I thought about it and decided, before I leave, I'll see him one last time. Chapter 19. I had never seen such chaos in a hospital before. Blood splattered across the entire wall. A group of doctors and nurses hurriedly pushed a patient towards the operating room, and in a glimpse, I saw that the patient was wearing a white coat. My pupils contracted. Who was that patient? I couldn't get through the crowd, but someone nearby told me. A middle-aged patient attacked a doctor and then jumped to his death. The doctor who was attacked, Dr. Eric, is a well-respected and highly skilled physician. It's heartbreaking. I pressed my hand against my chest, my heart racing uncontrollably. I had met Dr. Eric before. He was one of Sam's colleagues and good friends, a kind, gentle doctor. More voices of criticism from the patient's family reached my ears. That Sam is truly heartless. Instead of rushing to save Dr. Eric, he chose to save the murderer. Maybe he's jealous that Dr. Eric's medical skills are better than his. Maybe another doctor was already treating Dr. Eric, and Sam couldn't get in, so he decided to help the attacker. Rubbish. They didn't understand anything. Sam would never be like that. I had no energy to argue with them, so I anxiously waited for the outcome of the surgeries. The doors to the operating room finally opened. 2 pieces of good news followed. Dr. Eric has been saved and is now out of danger. It's a medical miracle. And the murderer has also been saved by Dr. Sam. I finally let out a breath of relief. Now I had the energy to set those clueless relatives straight. Dr. Eric was already being treated by highly skilled specialists. Sam didn't need to force his way in and create chaos. This is a hospital, not a marketplace. More people don't mean better results. As for the murderer, it's good that Sam saved him. He should live to see himself convicted, shamed by the world, and condemned for his actions. Letting him die would have been too easy for a scumbag like that. The people who had criticized Sam earlier turned red and fell silent. When I turned around, I saw that Sam had overheard everything again. He looked utterly exhausted, but his smile was bright. Diana, thank you for standing up for me. Otherwise, I might have been wronged to death. In a quiet moment, he leaned in and asked softly, "You came to see me to tell me you're not leaving tomorrow, right?" I knew he was talking about my departure from the system. I smiled. Sorry, but tomorrow, I am leaving. Chapter 20. Today was Melissa's birthday, and she was throwing an extravagant party at the villa. Kevin let her have her fun. At this point, besides money, there wasn't much else he could give her. Yesterday, Lucas had told the housekeeper he was going out to see Diana. Kevin didn't stop him. These days, Lucas spoke more to the housekeeper and maids than to him. But today, unexpectedly, Lucas knocked on Kevin's study door. His eyes were red, as if he had just been crying. Kevin frowned. "Didn't I tell you that boys shouldn't cry for no reason? You cried yesterday, and now you're crying again?" Lucas spoke softly, his voice heavy with sadness. "Mom is leaving today. She's going back to her own home, and she's never coming back." With that, Lucas walked away. It took Kevin a while to process what Lucas had said. He inhaled a deep drag of his cigarette, an odd sense of panic swelling in his chest. He believed Diana wouldn't lie. Her system was taking her back. Now, he found himself actually believing that she had a system. Kevin grabbed his car keys from the desk and headed downstairs. But as soon as he opened the door, Melissa was standing outside. She stepped inside and slammed the door shut behind her. "Today is my birthday, and you're going to see her? Kevin, you bastard. Have you ever thought about my feelings?" Kevin didn't argue. At this point, he couldn't argue. Melissa pressed her body against the door, blocking his way. She cried and yelled. Her perfectly applied makeup smeared halfway across her face. Kevin gritted his teeth. "Move. Today. I won't let you go after her, even if I die." Kevin didn't want to hurt her, because, in a way, he pitied her, a woman whose husband didn't love her. He simply stood by the window and let out a cold laugh. "Melissa, I don't care about you, but please don't get in my way. And have you ever considered my feelings when you did those awful things?" Melissa's face visibly paled. "What things?" Kevin looked at her as if she were a stranger. "The assistant, the director. Do what you want, but stop messing with people around me." Melissa burst into hysterical sobs. "If it weren't for your neglect, your emotional abuse, would I have done anything wrong?" Kevin glanced at his watch. There was no time. He opened the second-floor window and jumped out. If he didn't leave now, he felt like he was going to lose his mind. Kevin got into his car, slammed his foot on the gas pedal, and sped away. This might be his last chance, his last hope that Diana would stay. But things didn't go as planned. Kevin sped recklessly down the road, and at a sharp corner, he collided head-on with an oncoming sports car. The screeching sound of metal crashing filled the air, and he completely lost control of the vehicle. His consciousness began to fade. The airbags deployed. Blood dripped steadily from his head. One of his legs was trapped beneath the seat, completely immobile, probably ruined. For the first time since he became an adult, Kevin cried like a child. He knew now, he had no chance left. He would never have the chance to keep Diana. Chapter 21. Today is the day I'm supposed to leave. But I didn't. No one knew. It took me a while, but I finally found Sam and his daughter. Under the fading light of the sunset, Sam stood there like a finely sculpted statue. He quietly watched the distant coastline, his expression both lonely and defeated. Meanwhile, little Sophia was busy digging in the sand with the small shovel I had given her. As she dug, she muttered softly to herself. I stepped closer, and I couldn't help but laugh when I heard her. "Crab, don't come and pinch me. Diana's gone." and I had to think of 100 happy things just to keep myself from crying. Daddy can hold it in, and so can I, but if you pinch me and it hurts, I'll really cry. I crouched down and gently moved the little crabs out of her way. Go ahead. Keep digging, sweetheart. Sophia looked at me for a moment, completely stunned, before turning around and yelling, Daddy, come quick! I'm hallucinating in broad daylight. I'm seeing Diana, in the glow of the sunset. Sam's lips slowly curled into a smile, his eyes still tinged with a bit of redness. Sophia, it's real. Diana's come back. Sophia's joy exploded. Diana, you're not leaving, right? Sam casually stuffed his hands into his pockets. Didn't you say you were leaving today? I pointed to the cake sitting nearby. It's your birthday today. Can't I go out and buy a cake? Sam's smile grew visibly brighter. Sophia ran in circles on the beach, giggling as the waves chased her tiny feet. Sam's eyes shimmered. Hey, you didn't delay going home because of us, did you? That would make us feel really bad. Diana. I raised an eyebrow, grinning. Sam, you're starting to sound a bit manipulative. Of course it wasn't because of you guys. It's just that, for now, I can't go back. Chapter 22. Yesterday, while I was at the hospital, the system was still complaining. As expected, women are fickle. Last month, you said you were leaving, and now you want to stay? System, can you help me? Use my points to keep Dr. Eric alive, okay? Because the system had told me that originally, Dr. Eric wasn't going to make it. His life was supposed to end tragically. Sure, host. But once you confirm, all your points will be wiped out at once, and you won't have anything left. You also won't be able to return home. It's fine. System, I'll save up again. If it's not enough, I'll just borrow some of your points. The system was furious. You ungrateful human. Stop thinking about using mine. I'm a selfish and stingy system. No, you're a kind system. I knew. In truth, there was never a 3-year waiting period. The system had made it up. The central system wouldn't enforce such a ridiculous rule, because the system wanted me to be happy more than anyone else. In that other world, I was a lonely comatose person, with no family or friends waiting for me. The system wanted me to find happiness in this world. Even the house I'm living in now was recommended by the system. Host, this one is perfect. I feel like if you live here, both of us will prosper. How is a system going to get rich? It was just helping me meet people who were meant to cross my path. The system didn't waste its efforts. Thanks to it, I met Sam and Sophia. Chapter 23. I made a deal with the system and used all my points to keep Dr. Eric alive. So, I can't leave now. As soon as I finished speaking, Sam froze, then suddenly pulled me into his arms. Cold tears streamed down his face and into my neck. Diana, thank you. You're truly, truly amazing. Sophia clapped her hands and laughed. Daddy, aren't you embarrassed? You're a grown-up, but you're crying more than me. I laughed and pushed him away gently. Yeah, a grown man over 6 feet tall, crying like this. Is he trying to make a new ocean? Sam straightened up and cleared his throat. I'm not just 6 feet. I blinked. What do you mean? I'm 6'2" and 3/4. I burst into laughter, and Sophia giggled along with me, until the sunset disappeared beneath the horizon. The three of us, bathed in the golden light of dusk, walked home together. Home, our home.